This is Standing Watch. And now, Evangelist Norbert Link.
Greetings everyone, and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. The Standing Watch program today is a little bit longer than usual, but I hope that you will not tune off right away, because what I'm going to tell you today is of extreme importance. At least that's how I feel about this, and I don't want to cut it short. I want to give you an overview which is objective, not the massive cover-up which is happening in Germany right now, and not only in Germany. I'm speaking about migrant violence, and I'm speaking about the fact how many responsible agencies, including the government, have been trying to have and conduct a massive cover-up to not let the people know what is happening. Now, this program today is in no way directed against individuals, against races, against nations. That is not the purpose at all. But I want to show you that if you engage in lies, reality will catch up and things will be much worse than if you had told the truth. What am I talking about? Now, of course, I am talking about, first of all, the terrible events which took place in Germany, in Cologne, on New Year's Eve. And the evidence has been clear from the outset, but it has been purposefully hidden from the German public. And many news agencies in the mainstream media, inside and outside Germany, had chosen originally not to report it. Not to report it at all. The Local wrote on January 4 that men of Arab background were likely responsible, they say then, now it's not an issue anymore that they were, likely responsible for sexual assaults on dozens of women, by now it's hundreds of women, in central Cologne over the New Year, police said on Monday, as a social media storm accused police and media of a cover-up. As the extent of the crimes emerged on Monday, and as I said, they have emerged much more now, the story became the central theme of Twitter. Many people accused the national media of engaging in a cover-up due to the ethnic background of the criminals, with many pointing to the fact that it took days before the details of the story reached national attention. And those details are still forthcoming 2 weeks later, and it's horrible what is being revealed now in the German press. Now, 2 weeks later, writing for the Huffington Post Deutschland, Annabel Schunke accused the police of covering up details about the suspected criminals in order to protect public order, questioning why no details were given on the appearance of the subjects when police called for witnesses. Despite plentiful CCTV footage, Schunke suggested that police chose to leave important details out so that the public would not make a connection between the crime and refugees. In its details, the case is reminiscent of the mass sexual assaults which took place in North Africa during the huge Arab Spring protests of 2011-2013, Schunke points out, writing of her concern that so many people are moving to Germany from Muslim societies. Now, that's very strong wording, and people don't like to hear it. Specifically, political and governmental officials don't like to hear that. Now, we are publishing weekly updates, and if you don't have a copy and don't get a copy of our weekly updates, please write us and we'll be more than happy to send you via email a free copy of our weekly updates. And in the last one, we wrote this. It's almost ironic that in Chancellor Angela Merkel's traditional New Year's address, she told Germans they should see the arrival of thousands of migrants as an opportunity and warned of divisions in German society. That's what the EU Observer, dated December 31, pointed out. However, it is becoming more and more obvious, that's what we are saying, that Angela Merkel's policy regarding migrants and refugees has been failing. Backlash is unavoidable. Die Welt am Sonntag published an explosive article on January 7, stating that German police officers vehemently deny the official version that it is unknown as to who Cologne's perpetrators and aggressors were. They say that some of them came from North Africa, but most of them were Syrian refugees who had just arrived in Germany. The police officer states that the migrants' primary goal was to have some sexual amusement, quote unquote, and that robbing attendees was only their secondary goal. The police officers also declare that they arrested at least 100 migrants and checked their identities, and that this is the reason why they know that most of them were Syrians. Why isn't that revealed? Why isn't that talked about? Well, the answer is obvious. We go on to say they also state that many migrants arrived from outside Cologne and that at least 2,000 aggressors were involved. But they also point out that many friendly and peaceful Arabs were in the crowd, who even asked the police whether New Year's Eve was always celebrated in Germany in such a brutal fashion. And they were anxious to get out of the Cologne environment at the main train station. Of course, there are many innocent people involved here. But we have said from the outset that those migrants will include terrorists even from ISIS and others who are there to create trouble. Deutsche Welle wrote on January 6, "There is no doubt about who the perpetrators were. They were young, male, and looked North African or Arab. Unfailingly, this has brought the migration and refugee debate to a new level. The sexist assaults only became public much later than New Year's Eve. And it wasn't the police who made the incredible events public either. It was the female victims whose criminal complaints got the ball rolling, bringing to light an issue that is a massive threat to the city's social peace." And the local then wrote on January 11, Ralf Jäger, the Interior Minister of North Rhine-Westphalia, states that initial findings of a crime probe over the crime spree has piled pressure on Chancellor Angela Merkel over her liberal stance towards refugees. Witness accounts and the report by the local police, as well as findings by the federal police, indicate that nearly all the people who committed these crimes were of foreign origin, he said. That's January 11. It took a long time to get to that point. Justice Minister Heiko Maas has said he believes the violence in the western city of Cologne was organized. For such a horde of people to meet and commit such crimes, it has to have been planned somehow, he told Bild am Sonntag newspaper. No one can tell me that this was not coordinated or planned. The suspicion is that a specific date and an expected crowd was picked, he said. And quoting confidential police reports, Bild am Sonntag said some North Africans had sent out calls using social networks for people to gather in Cologne on New Year's Eve. Now, you don't even hear that here in America. I've been listening to some of the programs, and there's still all kinds of apologetic nonsense which is being revealed, quote-unquote, to you when it comes to what happened in Cologne. Now, it's going to happen in other places as well. InfoWars reported on January 5 that this massive cover-up didn't start with Cologne, didn't start with New Year's Eve. It says, critics have pointed out to the fact that the story has been ignored by many large German news outlets. In general, English-language mainstream media has also failed to report on what happened, although BBC News did cover the story. Many people accuse the national media of engaging in the cover-up due to the ethnic backgrounds of the criminals, with many pointing to the fact that it took days before the details of the story reached national attention. This is not the first time that authorities in Germany have been accused of covering up crimes committed by migrants. Now listen to this. After a 13-year-old girl was raped at a migrant camp in Detmold, police buried the incident, fearing it could lead to right-wing demonstrations. Although the rape took place in June, police kept silent about it for nearly 3 months, until local media published a story about the crime. According to an editorial comment in the newspaper Westfalenblatt, Police are refusing to go public about crimes involving refugees and migrants because they do not want to give legitimacy to critics of mass migration. At the Gatestone Institute documents reports of migrants raping women in and around migrant camps in Germany have exploded since the country opened its borders to around 1 million refugees last year. Now here's an article about the Daily Mail. Hopefully I'm not, boring you with these things, because they are extremely highly explosive. And you haven't heard, I guarantee, you haven't heard most of it yet. The Daily Mail wrote on January 8, and I'm sparing you the intimate details of the sexual assaults. I don't even want to go into those. Figures this week revealed that 1.1 million newcomers registered for asylum in Germany in 2015. Many more, including potential jihadists and opportunists pretending to be refugees, are suspected of slipping in under the radar since August, when German Chancellor Angela Merkel controversially announced she would welcome all Syrian migrants who knocked on the door. German ministers say 3,200 migrants a day continue to enter the country. Did you get that? 3,200 migrants a day. Many Germans, including some of the victims themselves, have accused authorities of a conspiracy, of silence, over the assaults to stop criticism of the mass immigration policy pursued by Mrs. Merkel and her politically correct supporters. The mainstream media in Germany has until recently toed the government line. Notice this, top public broadcaster ZDF recently refused to run a segment about a rape case on its prime-time Crime Watch show because the dark-skinned suspect was a migrant. Cracks only began to show just before New Year. Bild, Germany's largest daily newspaper, broke ranks by accusing officials of conducting a campaign of deception on a massive scale by burying bad news on migration. It reported that drug gangs involved in organized crime were actually recruiting newly arrived migrants from the vast temporary camps where they live. Take 59-year-old Akif Pirinikil, an outspoken right-winger and German writer of Turkish origin, who has warned that Christian Germany is becoming Islamic. His books. Do you have any doubts there is a massive cover-up going on? His books, one of which is called Germany Gone Mad, were bestsellers until last autumn, when big publishers and bookshops chose not to distribute them anymore. It's the first time since the Nazi era that such censorship has occurred. In another controversy, Catholic journalist Matthias Matusek lost his job at the respected German newspaper Die Welt after he posted his views on November's massacre in Paris on his personal Facebook page, saying mildly, "I think that the terror in Paris will move our, i.e. German, debate about open borders and young Muslims in our country in an entirely new and fresh direction." That was already enough. He was killed. Killed psychologically speaking. He was fired. André Schulz, head of Germany's Criminal Police Association, said recently that in his experience, 10% of the migrants would turn to criminality, including theft, sexual assault, or drug dealing. The policy has been to leave the German population in the dark. Ordinary citizens are being played for fools, he declared. Is there any connection perhaps to what's happening in this country? Any connection at all? As I said, even American news stations and newscasts don't really dare to reveal what I am telling you today. The article goes on to say, Germany is having to confront the harsh result of welcoming a huge number of men from a culture which denigrates women and abhors the social rules of a modern European society. The European Commission estimates that 3 million more migrants, many of them ill-educated Muslim males who are illiterate even in their own Arab language, will arrive in the EU this year, meaning 2016. The chances of successfully integrating them is next to nil. That's a problem. People talk about assimilation, talking about integration. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Deutsche Welle reported on January 8th. The majority identified themselves with Syrian passports or asylum papers. Only a few of them had been in Germany for longer than 3 months, according to officers who were on duty. That's talking about, again, these horrible events on New Year's Eve. But that's exactly what the mayor, prompted by the police chief, took issue with at the press conference on Tuesday. There was no evidence to suggest that the molesters were refugees, she said. But anyone who had access to internal police data banks knew even then this was a lie. And the article says lying can never be an answer, because the damage is even greater when the lie finally comes to light. And the article also says it will take much more than a language course or an Arabic translation of our Constitution to integrate such men into our society. What men? Well, he says these are men coming from a culture where women who go out at night, who dance, who drink alcohol, who wear tight clothing, who don't cover their hair, are labeled whores. That's a culture which is being brought into Germany. And so in our weekly update, we say this: Germany has her scapegoat. Cologne's police chief, Wolfgang Albers. Now, he had to resign, the police chief. We ask how many others have been directly or indirectly involved in this massive cover-up. That will perhaps remain an open secret for a long time. Many allegations have been made in Germany that police and the media had colluded in an institutional cover-up over the Cologne attacks, according to the Telegraph, dated January 8th. Angela Merkel has declared earlier that multiculturalism has failed. But on January 8th, she stated, according to the EU Observer, that the fundamentals of cultural coexistence must be discussed. The magazine also pointed out that, quote, Finnish police said that widespread sexual harassment was reported in Helsinki during New Year celebrations on the city's central square. The suspects were asylum seekers. Angela Merkel's reflection might come much too late, we say, and amounts to far too little. On January 8th, the Telegraph quoted Robert Fico, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, as saying, the idea of multicultural Europe has failed. The migrants cannot be integrated. It is simply impossible. And because it is impossible, voices are becoming louder and louder now that Merkel should resign. The New York Times, most certainly not a friend of Angela Merkel, but most certainly also not a friend of the Republicans, has this to say on January 9. Conservatives have made important points about the difficulty of assimilation, the threat of radicalization, and the likelihood of Paris-style and Cologne-style violence in European cities. Until recently, Europe's assimilation challenge looked unpleasant but not insurmountable. With the current migration, though, we are in uncharted territory. The issue isn't just that immigrants are arriving in the hundreds of thousands, rather than the tens of thousands. It's that a huge proportion of them are teenage and 20-something men. Many of these men carry assumptions about women's roles that are diametrically opposite to the values of contemporary Europe. If you believe that an aging, secularized, heretofore mostly homogeneous society is likely to peacefully absorb a migration of that size and scale of cultural difference, then you are a fool, this New York Times article points out. Such a transformation promises increasing polarization among natives and new arrivals alike. It threatens not just a spike in terrorism, but a rebirth of a 1930s-style political violence. Do you know what he's talking about? He's talking about the era which brought Hitler to power, the 1930s. Prudence requires doing everything possible to prevent it. That means closing Germany's borders to new arrivals for the time being. Now, haven't we heard something like that stated here in the United States, and people who say that are being terribly accused and attacked? It means beginning an orderly deportation process for able-bodied young men. Haven't we heard that stated here? And again, people who say that have been attacked by the liberal mainstream media. It means that Angela Merkel must go, this author says, so that her country and the continent can avoid paying too high a price for her high-minded folly. Now, strong words. I could say a lot more. I think that will suffice for now. What is happening in Germany is a forerunner of what's going to happen in many other countries around the world, especially in the Western world. But even more importantly, it sets the stage for the arrival of a very charismatic political leader in Germany who will replace Angela Merkel, who will replace the current political establishment, who have all miserably failed. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what the Bible prophesies. A charismatic leader in Germany will arise. He is called the Beast. But we have prepared a booklet, the 10 European revivals of the ancient Roman Empire. This booklet proves from history and also from the Bible that the ancient Roman Empire would actually be revived 10 times. 9 times it has already occurred. What we are seeing right now is the final revival. It's going to be a revival under a very charismatic political leader who's going to work hand in hand with a very charismatic religious leader. And the Bible says when that happens, the return of Jesus Christ is very, very near. And that is why these events, which I have talked to you about today, will have tremendous impact on the immediate future. Thank you very much for listening. This is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.
Standing Watch is a presentation by The Church of the Eternal God, P.O. Box 270519, San Diego, California 92198. More information is also available at our website, eternalgod.org.